Okay, can you guys hear me all right? Okay, great. Just a couple of quick minutes, a couple of quick seconds on me. I'm a partner at a firm called Catapult in Silicon Valley. We are an early stage venture capital firm. We do focus on companies outside Silicon Valley. So our value proposition is working with promising companies all over the world, specifically in Southern Europe and in Latin America, companies that we can then leverage our deep networks of relationships in Silicon Valley to bring to the top tier investors in the planet. So let me move quickly forward. We're very on short time here today, but I want to introduce my first guest, which is from a company called Tide. Please welcome George Bevis.
Hey.
George?
Hey. Thanks, Jonathan. Can everyone hear me? Can you hear me? Cool. Those aren't my slides. I'm just going to see if I can click in a different direction to see if I can... No? Let's see if... I hope I'm not ruining somebody's presentation here. Okay, we'll go back. I'll do it without slides. Who knows what Tide is? I come from a company called Tide. Who's heard of Tide? You've heard of Tide. One person. 2 people, 3 people. Hardly anyone's heard of Tide. Okay, so you have no idea who this random bald man is on your stage. So this is what the journalists say about Tide. Journalists say 2 things about Tide. They say that we are the fastest growing B2B fintech in the UK ever, which is true. And they say that we're all about small business banking. And that's not really true. So what Tide is really about is people doing what they love. We think that the world would be a better place if more people did what they love. And people who run small businesses do what they love. The problem that they have is that they don't have enough time with which to do what they love. And I want to give you an example. So this is one of our members, a man called Tem Malesi. We're based in the UK. Tem now lives in London, but he was born in Ethiopia, where he grew up, and in his village, every day, the local people used to spend 2 hours brewing coffee together. And at the end of it, they would pass it around in a ceremony. It was an important part of building that community. And Tem came to London, and he was working in a bar. And he noticed that all of the coffee drinks in the UK, well, there were lots of nice ones for soft drinks, but the coffee-based liqueurs were very sugary. And he didn't like sugary drinks. So he invented an amazing sugar-free coffee liqueur, which is now sold all over London, and I hope in the future will be sold all over the world. And these liqueurs are delicious. I tell you all of this because the one thing I didn't mention there at all was banking. Tem obviously is not interested in banking, and I don't think any of you necessarily should be interested in your small business banking either. You're far too busy doing other things. So that's why we created Tide. Tide is a next-generation banking service that gives you time back so you don't have to worry about doing the sort of laborious processes you're used to doing in your business. So, for example, there's a 5-minute period to 5-minute sign-up online to get an account. How many of you have opened a bank account in your countries for your businesses? Who's done that? Okay. Now keep your hand up if you manage to do it in less than 5 minutes. 1 person. Wow. Maybe you're a Tide customer. I don't know. So it's very rare. This is a pretty revolutionary thing we've achieved. You scan your ID on your mobile, you get an account. You get in the UK, we call your account identifier the sort code and account number. It's the standard referral, like an IBAN for a checking account. We do your bookkeeping for you automatically, and you can also send invoices from Tide, and you can upload them in, and Tide will pay your third-party invoices as well. And this is growing fast. There we go. So we are now 7% of all new business current accounts, which is what we call checking accounts in the UK. And we're growing rapidly. We're going to be in Europe next year. Thank you.
Thank you, George. So have a seat here. We're going to have a little short chat. Obviously, this is a growth summit, so we're going to have some questions around growth of the business. But I'd like to start real quickly, if you can give me maybe the epiphany for Tide, beyond just Ted there. What was it maybe in your background, something that happened where you said, this is something that needs to exist in the world, and I am the right person and the right team behind me to build it?
So I have a slightly strange background. To my great shame, I'm ashamed to admit I was a banker for years, but I've also been an entrepreneur repeatedly, and I've also done a lot of work on public policy around small businesses. So I wrote a book on small business public policy a few years ago for one of the British political parties. Actually, if you have that background, it was pretty obvious that a business like Tide needed to be created. The tough thing was working out how it could be created, because building a full bank is incredibly expensive. Then we got lucky, and we saw in the States that business, Simple.com, who were the first to invent a bank that wasn't a bank, and we learned a way to do it that was cheaper, and that's how the journey started.
Great, and as you've grown the business, obviously the big challenge for entrepreneurs is when they're hiring, when they're recruiting, when they're building teams, is always, is this the person that's right when we're a 20-person company? Will they be the right person when we're a 200-person company? As you reflect on your journey as a founder, as a CEO, can you think of some epiphanies that you've had in terms of your management style and some of the things that you've learned that maybe you wish you learned when you were first starting out?
So we're at 50 people now, so we're experiencing a lot of those experiences right now. The big epiphany for me actually happened by accident. I always hoped that we'd have a really nice workforce, but I didn't know that we would achieve an epic workforce. And we wrote down a set of values and behaviors that we wanted, well, I wrote it, between employee number 1 and employee number 2. And it turned out by the time we got to employee number 5, that along the way, everyone we'd hired was genuinely very nice and very smart. And that's not always the case in tech. And although probably on employee number 3 or 4, I would have been more willing to be flexible on those things. By the time we had 5, and they're all nice, we weren't going to hire an arsehole for number 6. And that really, if I'm honest, it happened by luck. It wasn't, I wasn't always confident I'd be able to have that.
Now, you're obviously operating in an industry that's going through massive transformation globally, not just in continental Europe or in the US, but really all over the world. The idea of what is banking, what is finance is being rewritten every day. What keeps you up at night? What is your biggest concern as you navigate these waters, as you go after incumbents that are far larger than you with larger capital stacks to play against you? How do you think about these issues?
So the companies I don't worry about are the ones with more capital, because the ones with the most capital are the big banks, and I don't worry about them at all. They're just victims in this space in the future. What I worry about more is the ability of companies like ours to become well known. So we already have a product that's much better than what was historically out there, but most people don't know about it.
So it's about getting your message out.
Absolutely.
It's about marketing. And as you think about measuring growth, what is the metric that you think most about? Is it customer acquisition? Is it some other metric that is really driving your business that you can share? Of course, I don't want you to give away the farm here.
Yes. We recently decided that the metric that will govern our business for the next few years is the absolute number of recommendations that our business receives, which is different from Net Promoter Score, because that's about whether or not you would recommend. We're interested in whether or not you actually did recommend.
So customer satisfaction is a big part of what you're pushing and you're providing for your customers.
Absolutely. And it's also what motivates most entrepreneurs. We all want to build something that is really special and solves a problem.
Right. Well, George, thank you so much for your time. I know we're going to appreciate tracking you in the future, and good luck with Tide.